these sessions are going to allow you to be more proactive and get the tools you need to be able to be an effective leader and also really manage your organization.
So are we seeing a diverse amount of people in the C-suite jobs and the CEO?
You have to be innovative. That's another thing that many companies are missing because we're stuck in the way we do things, the way that has worked for us. Welcome to another episode of your Act and Lead live series, Rise or Fall. I'm joined as always by our beautiful, beautiful team, Miss Aisha Thomas and Mr. Corey Seague. How's it going, guys?
Hey.
It's all good on this end.
And we got some titles for y'all. I'm Tyrus. I'm your business system strategist. Corey is our team engagement specialist. And Aisha is our leadership and development specialist. So think about us as your go-to for those specific areas, and we will be able to help you guys. Today, we want to kind of talk about, well, first, we're going to hit the leadership in the news and what's going on. So one of the things that popped up on our radars was that Ruby Tuesdays filed for bankruptcy. So we don't know if they're going forever, but we do know that things will be changing. So Aisha, if you want to kind of talk about that, and I'll bring up the image so we can just dive into it.
Okay. So we have a segment called Leadership in the News. What we'd like to take is real, actual stories out there that are in the news and talk about them. What can we learn about it from the lens of leadership development, team development, business development, to help you business leaders, leaders from all levels, maybe learn something from it. And in this case, we have Ruby Tuesday. Anyone who knows Ruby Tuesday, I love their mozzarella sticks, y'all. But they are actually filing bankruptcy. So to kind of give you additional information on what's the story behind that, it says the Tennessee-based casual chain is joining many others struggling to stay relevant against a growing roster of fast food and fast casual rivals, finally pushed into bankruptcy by the loss of business during the pandemic. Letterman, he's one of the individuals that pretty much runs this organization. Court filing also cited declining mall traffic and the growing popularity of meal kits, grocery, and food delivery. So from this information, why they're basically filing bankruptcy, two things that stand out to me is innovation and still being that problem solver. One of the things that we'd like to really show or break down in regards to, even if you're a leader, what problems are you solving? What things can you do to stay relevant? And as you're seeing a change in the market and the needs of the consumer, of the client, the customer, even the team member, what are you doing to make sure you're innovating so you can pretty much support those individuals and also grow and develop so you can pivot a different way? So I'll just start off with you, Corey. What's one of the things that you can, just start to kind of like help the people out there when you're thinking about innovation and being that problem solver? What is it that you took from this situation with Ruby Tuesday and a lot of other businesses that are shutting down to help people out there understand the benefit of being an innovator?
Yeah, and I think we have to start pushing it as innovation in a sense of like, are you memorable? So y'all talked about the mozzarella sticks. I've had them before. I was like, oh, they're pretty good, but I can't really tell you very much about Ruby Tuesday outside of that. I know they had a salad bar, and that was kind of like the one thing that came to mind when you sent that post and was like, oh, they're getting shut down. I was like, oh, that's the place with the salad bar. Outside of that, I was like, what kind of experiences have I had? I really can't recall very many experiences being there. So I think when we talk about innovation, we want to think about, okay, how do we stand out from the pack, right? So when I think about Ruby Tuesdays, I think about Chili's, I think about Applebee's, Outback, those types of like in-line restaurants with them. So why would I want to go to Ruby Tuesdays over a Chili's, over a Outback, over Applebee's? That's a different conversation for a different day. I think when it comes to being innovative, you had places out here who, especially in the pandemic, they were offering, as you say, the meal kits that are being put out there. What can you offer as Ruby Tuesdays for you to be able to put something out there, right? I was looking at the torchy tacos yesterday. I didn't order there, so I did good for myself. But they're even ordering, hey, here's a whole taco pack for the family, right? So instead of ordering individual tacos that can ring up a price really quick, here's $30. You can feed the family of 5 with it. And so that looks a lot more economical to me versus I got to go into your restaurant, buy stuff. I haven't heard, and y'all correct me on this if y'all heard anything about it. I haven't heard anything about Ruby Tuesday since the pandemic started. How are they being innovative? How are they changing things? So those are some of the things I want you to start to think about is like, when you start to pivot, can I offer things that will then fill the needs of my customers? Can I offer that meal plan? If you're shutting down because there are meal plan services out there, you might want to come up with meal plans. So that's kind of my take there. Now I got something at the end. I want y'all to finish touching on this innovation side, but I got something at the end when it comes to the employees and the team building. I want to touch on, but I'm gonna go ahead and kick it over to you, Aisha.
All right, now that's great. I mean, again, what I love what you talked about, what made their experiences at Ruby Tuesday memorable. I mean, like, I think that you want to create a separate experience, just something that's saying like Ruby Tuesdays is shutting down. Like, man, I remember this happening. They had this one thing that I'm just going to miss tremendously. So even as you're creating your business idea, as you're creating whatever it is that you're trying to do, even with, again, a leader within the organization, what's going to make you memorable? I hope when I leave my organization, people are like, Aisha's leaving. What about this? What something stood out about how I led there that they're like, oh, we're going to miss this. Like I mentioned on Thursday when we did the live Q&A, which you guys definitely need to be a part of to ask your questions, your concerns, and we can support you in that, is I have created systems within our organization, within previous organizations that are still being used today. I was able to create something, leave it there, that's still being utilized years and years later. So what is it about your leadership style? What is it about your business? What is it that you're going to do that's going to be so memorable that you leaving, or even the talks of you leaving, people are like, no, we don't want that. Or even if you decided to roll out a new product, people are still willing to support you because what you've done has been so influential or been so amazing. So what is your take on that, Tyrus, in regards to innovation and still really starting to develop your business to pivot a different way when there are times like the pandemic, times like a recession? What is it that business leaders out there can learn from this situation with Ruby Tuesday?
Definitely having a plan. And what is our overarching plan for the future? And then having something in place for if bad things happen. Most companies don't strategically plan for the worst case scenario. You mentioned before, Aisha, continuity planning. What happens when things break down, when things don't go as well as we thought they would be, when disaster happens? And some companies just do not make those changes. And I was just looking up right now if Ruby Tuesdays was on DoorDash, and they are. So there's something else. There's something there. There's a gap, because if they're on DoorDash, that means they could have kept prepping their food. They could have kept sending it out. People, it could have been delivered. So I go back to Corey's point, is they did not connect or keep up with connection with people. So we forgot about them, because the only thing I remember is the salad bar and the mozzarella sticks. And I think when I told my wife, she was like, well, the food wasn't that good anyway. So when we're thinking about them, they didn't connect with people in order to stay in business. And if we didn't see it, they obviously didn't make an attempt either. No commercials, no new menus, no anything to just put them out there. So if you don't stay with that top of mind awareness, if you don't have it, people forget you and we move on to something else. So I think that strategically, they just didn't plan well, or they failed to plan.
That is exactly right. I mean, and again, it's starting to make me think. So you guys mentioned that the salad bar and the mozzarella sticks stood out. So from there, did they know that the salad bar and the mozzarella sticks were the only thing that stood out? And I'm sure there are other products or other things from there that really stood out as well. Maybe they had a great bar or great drinks or whatever. So why is it important, or what do leaders out there need to know or need to do in order for them to identify what works and what doesn't work? I'll kick it all back off to you, Corey.
Yeah, I think, and this is something that we talked about on Thursday, right? I think you got to pay attention to what sells. So many people out here, they just, oh, I'll just sell everything. And especially for restaurants, you go into the restaurant and there's like 7,000 items on the menu. Well, you got all these things, but what's the number one thing that you could do? What's the great thing? You think about a Chick-fil-A, they sell what? Chicken. If you go there, you're going to get some chicken, right? You're not going to get steak. You're not going to get fish. You're not going to get all that. You're going to get some chicken. And so what they said was, we just going to have the best chicken ever. And if you want some chicken, you can come to Chick-fil-A. Right. And it started with really what the creator of it, he just said, hey, I had this really good chicken breast that we cooked. So I just want everybody to have it. But yeah, it just comes down to what are the things, what does my client want? What do my customers want? And then let me scale it down and be like, okay, I'm going to push this agenda out. Right. So maybe it is the mozzarella sticks. Maybe they could have had a salad mozzarella stick package. You know what I mean? So, can you be creative enough to say, okay, I need to pay attention to what sells. This other stuff is costing me money. I might have sold one steak a month, but I got 50 steaks stocked in the back. I've just spent money on stock that I'm not really using like that. So those are the types of things that I think you got to pay attention to as a business owner, especially if you have your physical product. You want to pay attention to what are you stocking, what is being bought.
Absolutely. Market research at its finest. You need to know what your people want, what your customer base is looking for. Put those samples out there, try some things, test some things, get some surveys, some reviews, so you can understand, okay, this is the demographic or the people that I'm serving. This is what they want. Maybe they were serving the wrong thing in the wrong place. Maybe you needed more steaks and less salad. But, I think that the rise of healthy eating also impacted them. Did they change their menus to offer vegan items, more salad items, or more healthy options, less salt, less soda? And when people are making a change, and if you don't shift, you fall out of line, especially when you're paying a higher price because it's a sit-down restaurant. It's not a McDonald's. People gonna always go to McDonald's. I don't care how healthy they want to eat because of the price point. If you're paying more, then hey, we might not go there. So let's pivot. Today we're talking about Charlemagne the God and Joe Budden, two radio personalities, podcast hosts. They have a lot of history, and we just want to dive into kind of where they came from, how they started, and now to where they are now, and the big shifts and moves that they're making in the industry. It's almost like they're going independent of their employers. They're changing and they're moving in a different direction because they didn't think they were treated fairly. So Aisha, if you don't mind kicking us off, I guess we could start with Charlemagne the God.
Yeah, so today we really want to focus on the power of leverage, because when we look at what Charlemagne the God has done and what Joe Budden has done, they have been able to take their experiences and have been working with an employee or being an employee, and they've been able to maximize that to help them in building their brands and their businesses. So what we want to talk about is really focusing on the power of leverage between the two. So let's start off with Charlemagne the God. Some of you guys might not know who he is. Many people know him from The Breakfast Club. Many people know him from, being basically nationally syndicated, being a radio personality, but he's so much more than just solely a radio personality. He's from Moncks Corner, South Carolina. Shout out to Moncks Corner. He, in his early career, he started just at a local radio station. And from working at the local radio station, he was able to really start learning and understanding how to do radio and how to like the ins and outs of it. He worked for the Wendy Williams show for a while, and he was actually fired from there. But again, experience. He had an employer at the time. From then, he was able to host multiple TV shows. He, again, nationally syndicated on The Breakfast Club, and he was able to create something. Sorry, guys, my son is in here, and he is just doing his own thing, so forgive the background noise. Listen, moms, again, listen, you have to juggle multiple things. So you know what? There's a level of being a mom and also, doing our business things. But anyway, he was able to also release 2 books, which ended up being New York Times bestsellers. He's a mental health advocate. He has a podcast. And recently, he became a Radio Hall of Fame inductee. So his resume is so extensive. But again, he was able to leverage every single one of his experiences because now he has his own production company. And because he became a staple, he recently has been able to launch something called the Black Effect podcast. It's basically the Black Effect podcast community. And what he's doing, he's bringing a lot of Black voices that have been popular in the podcast realm, and he's been able to create something really effective from it. So that's what he's been able to create. So based off of the life of Charlemagne, from what you guys see from his life, what has stood out from what you're seeing? And I'll start off with Corey, that talks about the power of leveraging your full-time job and now becoming someone that owns their own future, owns their own purpose, owns their own thing. And now they are the ones employing other people and opening doors for other people.
Yeah, I think it's the blueprint, right? If you're looking for a blueprint on how to leverage your previous jobs into getting you into the position that you need to be, that's the blueprint, right? So he was on Wendy Williams. Yeah, he got fired, but how much info did he learn from Wendy Williams? How much back end stuff did he learn from Wendy Williams? Like how much information did he gather by working through these different companies, right? Even with iHeartRadio, right? And we'll get into that. Get into that with in a second. Between him and Joe Budden, there's this talk of ownership and, well, I own mine, you don't own yours or whatnot. But how much more valuable is it to be able to learn with iHeartRadio and be able to leverage those executives and those contract negotiations and all these other things, right? So I think if you look at the blueprint, for those of you out here who are saying, you know what, I got to leverage a full-time job. I'm trying to get into my normal job, and we're gonna get into that question in a second because I'm gonna pass this off to Tyrus. But what are you doing, and what can you learn in your current job for you to be able to take it to the next level? Like, are you just going to work every single day and you're just saying, oh, I'm just getting my check and I'm leaving because I got this business I don't want to build? I want you to think about, because some people say, I'm gonna let this piece right here suffer because I'm working on this piece right here, when it really should be these pieces, right? I'm going to climb my job and I'm going to climb my business at the same time, because there are two different aspects to it. What can I get from that business, right? And before I give y'all too much, because we got to get to the next question, I'm gonna go ahead and pass this over to Tyrus on kind of what does this tell you about it?
So it tells me that Charlemagne, from the beginning or at some point, developed the exit strategy. He has been thinking about his vision, his dreams, his goals, what he wants something to look like. So, of course, not all of us can just jump out and you have money or have time or have whatever you need to just jump out and start a business. We have to have leverage. So we work our daytime jobs. We allow our daytime jobs to give us the funds we need to survive. And then not only those funds, but then you're able to take some of that money and build your business, your side hustle. And you continue to do that. And we know that people battle with, okay, if I got a job and I got a side hustle, when do I make the transition? And you just have to plan that out. I used to think, and most early entrepreneurs used to think, okay, you got to go all in. You got to quit your job and follow your passion. And then they end up broke and they go back to the job. So what you have to do is you create that game plan, that process of thinking that, okay, I want to be at this level in this amount of years. And then you build up and work those milestones. And just the reading about Charlemagne, and I'm not a huge Charlemagne fan. Me and him, we butt heads on some of the information that he shares, but he has become more polished. He has grown, and I have watched him develop into a voice of the culture. And now he is able to take that voice, because now he has a true following, and demand some things. You can't really demand some things when you don't have something to bring to the table. Now, I know that Charlemagne, along with Killer Mike, along with a lot of other these guys, are talking about, okay, let's stop fighting for a seat at the table and build our own table. But even when you're building your own table, there's some connections that you need. I know this is often, I'm going to throw it back to Aisha, but Master P said the same thing. When I tried to get into Hollywood with my movies, they wouldn't even answer the phone. They didn't pick the phone up. So he had to make a phone call to somebody he had an in with that was of an opposite race. And then they made the phone call and those doors opened. Same thing with Tyler Perry. When he first went into Hollywood, they were like, why y'all saying this way and you do it this way? Let's do it this. He was like, no, this is mine. And they were like, okay, no deal. But when he grew large enough, he had backing, then he was able to go build his own table, but also get a little bit of that seat at the other table. And I think that Charlemagne is on that same path. He had to follow the process. He had to work the jobs. He had to build himself up. And now he is able to start creating and controlling more.
Yes, exactly. I mean, I think that, so I've had people who have had maybe a negative experience in the workplace. And one of the pieces of advice I've always given them, like, say maybe they have a bad boss, they don't feel like, the organization or that company is supporting them effectively, and they start to slack. they start not to put like their best foot forward in what they're doing. And I always tell them these individuals are still going to have to write your evaluation. These people are still going to be the ones people call and ask for a referral. These are still going to be individuals that you still want to have on your resume. So instead of giving up, quitting, slacking off, I'm going to show you when I do walk away how impactful I was. I am going to make sure that every single evaluation and all the feedback that I get when they do call and ask, hey, what was it like when Aisha was working there? I want it to be so effective, and I'm going to make sure I am a staple at that organization, even in the face of stress, headaches, all that good stuff. Because again, every little thing you need to do is going to be like a chess move. And I think for a lot of people, it is kind of difficult when you're working for someone that isn't necessarily supporting you. One of the great things that I've been able to see that in regards to iHeart and the Breakfast Club and how they're able to support all those individuals that work with them is the fact that they're still able to promote their books. They're able to promote all the other things they're doing outside of solely what they're doing on the Breakfast Club. They have a great employer that's allowing them to also utilize that platform to talk about the other endeavors that they have. But a lot of people, again, when you are in an unhappy place, what is your exit strategy? But as you're working on your exit strategy, don't get to the point where you start to slack. And if they say, hey, so-and-so is ineffective, you basically proven the point. You've proven that you are ineffective because you allowed your mindset to get so affected by it that now you're not putting your best foot forward. And I'm not going to say that it's going to be easy. It's going to be frustrating. And as we pivot and talk about Joe Budden, he ran into that. It's going to be difficult where you're seeing that I'm not getting the support I need. I'm not able to take vacations like I want. But again, essentially, when you're pivoting out, I'm going to make sure that what I did was so powerful that you're going to remember me. I know I'm going to walk away. You're going to be like, man, we are like, really, you sure you want to leave? So just always think about that. We go to a lot of restaurants and a lot of places and you can tell people are not motivated. And I'm like, why? What have you not done so you can leave here? Because now you just look like the bitter employee that I'm going to go complain about to your manager. And all that's doing is proving the fact that you're ineffective when you actually are not. So what can you do to really start pivoting how you shape your time with your employer as you're walking towards ownership?
That's good.
Any last thoughts?
That's good. Before you jump in, Corey, to your point, Aisha, people who work a job, and restaurant is one of those industries that, you can tell people who love it and then people who just absolutely hate it. But I have known real estate agents that own teams that would go and sit down, and based on the service, based on the conversation, based on the level, they'd be like, you know what, this person might be have you ever thought about a real estate career? So sometimes, even when you don't like your job, if you perform and you bring value, you can open up opportunities. And they're just sitting there waiting on you to present that right attitude. So I think heavy with the mindset, heavy with attitude, you definitely want to utilize that to your advantage. And the old school people used to say, when you don't like your job, they used to say, well, you're getting paid, ain't you? So they had the mindset of, as long as I'm getting paid, I'm going to just work that job. Let's shift our mindset and say, not only am I going to get paid, I'm going to do this job at the highest level I can. I'm going to learn as much as I can. And then I'm going to pour that into my side hustle.
And look, because y'all touched me in my heart right quick. I just want people to understand, right, that if you don't, when you're trying to start a business, when you're trying to develop yourself in leadership, right, you have to understand that just because you pivot positions or you pivot jobs or you go from a full-time job to a business, what you lack at, you will still lack at. What you're good at, you will still be good at. There are too many people out here who think that my customer service is just absolute trash. But when I open that business, I'm going to give it 120%. No, your customer service is still going to be trash. So why don't you use your free job to be able to, and what by free, I mean, you're not going to get fired necessarily if you don't absolutely bring the 150% customer service that they want, right? Maybe you messed up an offer or something like, you're not going to lose any business, right? So you have to understand that what you are good at, you're still going to be good at. What you are bad at, it's not going to change because now you have this business. Like, you don't just flick a light on and then all of a sudden you're like, you know what? I'm not very organized, but I just signed up for my LLC. and here the list starts flowing down the line, and you're like, yeah, boom, 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 I got all the lists and the processes, right? Like you're gonna open that LLC, you're gonna be like, oh boy, where do I start?
Right.
That's how it works, right? And I'm just being real with you. So that's something that I want to talk about too. Like, how do we leverage that full-time job? Because I got a whole bunch of stories about people wanting to create YouTubes and catering companies and skincare companies from the jobs that they're currently in. And I'm like, why aren't you using this job to be able to just to leverage into that? That's free practice. You literally can just rep every single day in these avenues that you're not good at. So Aisha, I'm gonna kick it over to you. So why do leaders need to understand how to leverage their full-time job for like that ultimate goal?
Yeah. So, and I just want to, man, you just hit a nugget right there, because you talked about, like, if you are going to slack off when things aren't going well with your current employer and you want to start a business, what happens when you hit that road bump, that fall season in your business? The same thing. And I love what you talk about it. And that's why it's so important. It was important for us when we were creating our 12-week program that we started off with you building soft skills, right? Soft skills are those things like time management, customer service, like those skills that are really going to benefit you as well in leadership. If you decide to continue to work in your profession, or you decide I want to just branch off and really focus on owning my own thing, you have to build those soft skills, because if you can't, even in the thick of it within your organization, within the company you work for, you are showing or you're responding in a way that's not going to benefit you, the same thing, well, you'll take that same type of attitude into your business. So just like Corey said, if you can really it's going to be hard. If you really can dig deep and really learn how to overcome those trials, those seasons where it's hard for you to stick in there, it's going to translate into your business as well. It's going to translate into that. So we really want to make sure that we are thinking about that. And before I answer your question, I also want to talk about Joe Budden, right? Because we're getting into like the meat of it, right? So let's talk about Joe Budden and his experience. So Joe Budden from New York, he went from New York to New Jersey. Y'all hear that? New York, that's that DMV accent, right? New York, and he went to New Jersey, right? But he started off as a musical artist. His songs charted well. His songs were featured in Too Fast, Too Furious, You Got Served, multiple video games. And again, if you don't know who Joe Budden is, again, he started off as a artist, or what you want to call a rapper. He started as a rapper and he transitioned into this, like, again, this media personality that's just, again, killing it. Very popular. A lot of people love him. I mean, he is somebody that is on demand. So he was also Grammy nominated. He co-hosted a show called Everyday Struggle. He was on Love and Hip Hop. For people who watch Love and Hip Hop, it's a reality show, but a lot of people learn about him from that show. He's a YouTube staple. So he utilized and maximizes YouTube for a lot of his content. He's a host and executive producer of a show called State of the Culture, which he partnered with Puff Daddy, P. Diddy from Revolt on. So he hosts that. And then also he has the Joe Budden podcast. And now he's considered like the Howard Stern of hip hop, right? Kind of similar to what they say Charlamagne is. He's like the Howard Stern of radio, but for the African American culture. But with him, what happened with him is that he went through this tough battle with Spotify. There was complaints that, that this company was maybe leveraging a lot of like African American talent. They weren't allowing people to have the level of ownership and have basically maybe creative control of their podcast like they wanted. So it turned into like a big battle. And he complained about things like not getting paid bonuses, not being able to take vacation days. And they were offered Rolexes, but then the Rolexes that they wanted was too expensive, right? So for him, he had some things like, he highlighted that how Black creators are habitually devalued by media companies despite our tremendous influence and profits we generate. As we also know with the record industry, a lot of people have complaints and they have transitioned into becoming independent artists. Why? Because they have more creative control. Again, you're going into a machine. Anybody that knows that if you have an employer, they have their vision, they have their rules and regulations, they have their structure, and they expect you to adhere to that. But if you're somebody that's really trying to pivot into ownership, again, you have to be able to leverage and be smart of how you're transitioning throughout there, because essentially you are still working for someone that has rules, regulations, how they do do things, if you go under contract with them, you have to understand what you're signing. You're saying, I adhere to functioning based off of the standards and the scope of responsibility that they gave me. And what happened in this case is that throughout, his time with Spotify, he recognized, like, listen, I am driving a lot of traffic. I'm one of the top podcasts on Spotify, and I want to be able to renegotiate. And when we're going into this new contract season, I want a contract that allows me to have more creative control, allow me to get the revenue that I want. I want it to be shaped off of, what I've been able to bring to your platform. And again, unfortunately, he ended up leaving Spotify because he's like, listen, I want more creative control. And sometimes you have to do that. So as with your question, Corey, about leveraging, again, when you go into a job, when you go into a career, even before you do that, have you mapped out your intention? And maybe something you have a revelation, like I had a revelation a few years ago that I wanted to be a full-time employee. Like before, a couple years ago, I was fine with, after I retired the military, I was going to work in the federal government and be an employer until I turned 56, 60. That was my vision. But once I got around the right type of people, the community, people that expose me to ownership, to living, to how the 1% does things, shout out to ETA, I recognized, like, I wanted to do just something different. So now I'm pivoting where when I transition out the military, I want to I want to be the employer. I want to do my own thing. So when I realized I did that, I got the right type of mentors. I got around the type of community. I got an understanding in the education, which included investing in coaching programs, multiple ones, having a mentor to help me understand what is it going to take in order for me to do this. I know how to navigate my career in the military. That's already been handed to me. Now I'm going in uncharted waters, something I'm not understanding, something that I have to literally rewire my mindset and my brain to do, because again, I've been built to be an employee for the rest of my life. Now I have to reshape my brain. Now I'm thinking about being an employer for the remainder of my life, right? Remaining. So now that required me to get around other employers, other people that had that same mindset, and start pivoting in that aspect. So for me, it was so important that I started to get myself the level of exposure that I needed in order for me to pivot into that. And it looks like, do we have a question here?
Yeah, it seems like Trevor has a question with getting an LLC, but if you're not making any money, still has to pay taxes on the business. So I can hit that really quick. Depending on your state, if you form an LLC in your state, you may have to pay that yearly annual tax. Shouldn't be sales tax or other taxes. It should just be that annual tax. In Maryland, they call it the property tax. I don't know why it's property, but basically you're looking at the business assets. And if you don't have over a certain number, you just pay the minimum fee. But Trevor, the other side of that is whatever you're doing in your business or for your business, you can begin to write those off and take those tax deductions to lower your overall tax burden. I'm not a CPA, and that's my limited understanding of taxes and how it works. But I would always encourage you to get that LLC so you can begin to run through your business, the items that you need, write those off, get those deductions, and then pay that state tax as required at the end of the year. Think about it this way. It may seem to be exceedingly difficult to get projects now, but think about if you had a professional outlook, if you had a business name, if you had contracts, if you had those things in place as a business. Sometimes other businesses and other events or other people that need things look at that in that manner. They talk about, okay, are you legitimate? Are you a legitimate business, or are you someone flying solo? And Trevor, if you're still listening, if you're having a hard time getting projects, we need to kind of figure out why. Why are you having that kind of difficult time? On Thursdays, we have a free business and leadership Q&A where you can come in and you can ask those questions. You can tell us about what's going on, and we can help you brainstorm and create an action plan that will hopefully bring you more clients so you won't or you won't continue to have that issue.
Love it. Appreciate your question, Trevor. So as I already again mentioned, the power of leveraging and how to create that and actually developing a plan. I'll kick it back off to you, Tyrus, in regards to, well, you taking a sip. Back to you, Corey. And let's talk about, again, leveraging. And again, let's be transparent. Let's talk about some things that we've been able to do within our current full-time jobs. Me and Corey we work full-time currently as well. And we are able to leverage and really utilize our full-time jobs to pivot into ownership. So what are some things that you are doing currently, Corey, and so as you're pivoting towards that ownership side? And thank you, Trevor, for the question. I hope to see you Thursday.
Yeah, and I mean, it comes down to where are you going? What are you trying to do? And where can you find it? I just had a conversation with someone yesterday about it, matter of fact. And I said it's never too early to find mentorship. And so for me, I always knew, and it progressed down the line, right? So I was in college. I said, man, I just want to help people. So I went into the healthcare field. And so I was like, no, the healthcare field is not really what I want to be in. Long story short, I then had to, because I'm working, right? Because I'm pushing myself, because I'm putting myself in that environment. I was like, oh, leadership. I like helping people. I can raise people up. I can help people get better promotions. I can help people get raises. But I had to figure out, okay, how do I get better at that? So then I had to put myself around, okay, in these companies, who can help me, right? I remember being in my internship and I was sitting down with, I think she was the director of marketing and whatnot. I had no clue what went on in marketing. I just got out of college, right? But I went to her. I said, hey, can you teach me about how you pull people in? Can you teach me how to get people in here? Right. I sat down with the director of nursing. I'm not a nurse. I don't have anything to do with that, but I want your perspective. So can you get into these situations, find mentorship within your company? Can you get into the situations right now? One of my mentors, he's a vice president, right, of the company that I work for right now. So from his perspective, can I start looking at things from that high of a level? Right? Can I start looking at things from the vice president? I've spoken to senior vice presidents, executives before. Can I start to get that knowledge from what they're looking at it, from the scope of coming down, right? Because there's different levels to this, right? You can be an associate that's just like, hey, I'm focused on my job, but there's so much more that you have to worry about when you're at the top. But how do you gain that knowledge without having to be in that position? You got to go find somebody who can help you. And I'm not saying, so if you're, let's say, and I'm just going to use this for an example. If you're a cashier at a job, please do not go and find the CEO and say, can you mentor me? Please do not do that, because what that person will tell you, they're going to be like, well, if you work hard, because I came from the mailroom and I worked myself up and all the way through. If you go to that person, they're just going to be like, just work hard. Right. And we know that they're going to give these over encompassing, just keep your head down and work hard. Right. But if you go find a supervisor, if you go find a team lead first, if you go find a manager, right? I wouldn't even recommend going higher than a manager. If you're just an entry level person, don't go higher than that, because that person would then be able to tell you in your position, this is how you succeed to make it to the next step. Once you hit the next step, then you start looking at, okay, cool. Can I expand my value to go, or expand my knowledge to go to the next level? So that's really how it happened for me, right? I was in college. I worked at Best Buy. I was like, hey, I was a seasonal associate at that point too. Right. So I took myself, I said, hey, you over there, supervisor, team lead, how can I be better at this job? Boom. I got the full-time job. And then within a year, I then became the supervisor for my departments. Right. So I knew what it took to get there, because I went and found the person for where I wanted to go. That was attainable at the time, right? I get an internship. I get around the people who can teach me how to get into this job. Even my job right now, like they leverage me for different things within my position. Why? I've never been in a position, but I have the knowledge already because I put myself around those people. Actually, you said something really powerful. Like when you get around community, whether that's entrepreneurship within the business, within the company or whatnot, your whole outlook will change.
Yeah, your whole outlook will change. And again, we really, again, want to constantly think about being strategic about how we leverage these opportunities. Again, it's just not a full-time job. We really want to go in it as a like a chess game. That it's not like checkers. Like checkers is pretty simple to figure out. Chess is a whole nother, like you have to think. There's like, again, strategic moves you have to make in order for you to be king or the queen or whatever. I don't know how to play chess, so I just know that there's a level of now you have positioned yourself to this is now I own this. I won the game. I am the owner. And you have to really go about your career in a very strategic way. Even now when you transition into business, there's the strategies you have to do in the partnerships that you make. Again, I talked about how Charlemagne decided to, hey, as he was transitioning out of his contract that was about to end for the Breakfast Club and iHeart, he started to say, okay, I've showed you guys, I'm a Hall of Fame inductee. I'm a New York Times bestseller. I mean, we're nationally syndicated. I mean, you can hear the Breakfast Club all over the place. I remember there used to be morning show. There was a morning show here in San Antonio. Guess what happened? When the Breakfast Club came in, you no longer hear that morning show anymore. They have been able to create something that's so powerful. So there was a level of leverage that they were able to create by leveraging their career. So when it was time for contract time, it was like, no, listen, this is how much you're going to pay me. I want to have a level of ownership. I know that this partnership, because iHeartRadio is basically like the #1 podcast networking system out there. So he knows that, okay, if I want to have my podcast network distributed, I need to partner with somebody who is the guru in this space of podcast networking. Okay, let's partner, but this is how I want it to look. And this is my accolades. And this is what I was been able to build for these X amount of years in order for me to say, now, when I'm coming to the table, you need me and I need you too. So let's work out something that's going to be effective. And again, and he's been able to employ other people, get them the bag as well, because these individuals have great podcasts as well, including the Breakfast Club is still going to be within this realm. So the level of power and leverage he was able to create allowed him to leverage this opportunity. The key word today is what? Leverage. Okay. LEVERAGE. You know how like when they have spelling contests and they're just like, today's word, Bobby, is leverage. Can you use it in a sentence?
What's the origin?
Exactly. Well, I leveraged my job in order for me to become a business owner. Leveraged. Okay, I'm doing too much. So again, that's the power of leveraging. All right. So Tyrus, what were some things that you did before you transitioned into entrepreneurship that helped you in becoming this entrepreneur that you are today?
Oh, I sat around, like Corey said, I got around people who most of them, when I was working, they own their own business. So I was working for a company and then we partnered or, subcontracted to other companies. So I started getting around the actual ownership of those companies and learning the industry, learning the business. How do you create it? How do you build it? How do you scale it? How do you maximize it? And just using knowledge, allowing your companies to develop you. For those of us that had companies that poured into you, that give you education benefits, use them. Let them build you up, and then you take that information. When I think about Joe Budden and I think about his break with Spotify, it was, I don't think he read the contract all the way. And I think that's what him and Charlamagne beefed about. Charlamagne was like, did you read your contract? Because honestly, and I know that companies have a responsibility to their employees, but they also have their vision. And like Corey said, when you go into an industry and you look at their overarching vision, does it align with yours? Because when you get in and you sign those contracts, it's too late to say, hey, well, I want this. Then you might can renegotiate, but they have no obligation to give you what you want because it's their dream, not yours. So that goes back to planning and exit strategy. Design your life the way you want it, or else you'll be living by somebody else's design. Scottie Pippen had that same issue. He went in, he signed the contract. It was low. They lowballed him. He accepted it because he just wanted something for the family. And then once he became very valuable, he went to that table and they was like, you signed this. You should have did better. That's just, those are my thoughts. And to think about, with all that said, when is it time and how do you know when to evaluate partnerships, reevaluate them, look at them, figure out if this partnership is right for me? And then at what point do you begin to renegotiate? And I'll kick it over to you, Corey, to start that off.
Yeah, so I think, and I'm gonna talk to two parts of this, right? I'm gonna talk to the leadership part, and I'm gonna talk to the business part. So for those of you who are leaders within businesses, I want you to be so good at your job that it's very hard to get rid of you, right? I want you to leverage that job at that point to then say, this is a partnership because I'm so good, you don't want to get rid of me. Granted, take it with a grain of salt because yes, a corporation can say, okay, I can get rid of you. You can't just do whatever you want within this business. However, if you operate as your best self, if you give in 1,000% and you are truly the master at what you do at work, it's very hard for those people to sign off on any paper for them to be like, yeah, now we got to get rid of him or her. So I want you to become the person, right? Like the person, the team builder, right? The employee engagement specialist, right? To where when you move, they say, man, that's a chess piece that I can place wherever I want, right? And then you can start to reevaluate your partnerships with them and say, you know what? Is this position really good for me? Can I command attention to go to this other department? Can I command a raise? If you give me a bad raise, are you going to think on the backside of your head, oh man, well, I gave him a 50-cent raise. He done all his work for me. Maybe we shouldn't do that. We should probably give him a bigger raise than that because I don't want him going to a different company, right? So leverage yourself inside the business. Now, when it comes to your partnerships, as in an actual business entrepreneurship, you've built a business already. I want you to start to think about what did that contract say from the beginning, right? What value are you going to? Something that resonates with me is 50 Cent told, I think it was Nipsey Hussle. He said, don't ever call any one of your EPs or your mixtapes, don't ever call it an album because they can never say, I'm going to pay you this amount of money because your albums have done this. You don't have one. So what's the projection for it? Then you can negotiate the projection from there, right? You don't know, well, I have this many streams. I have this many people who's bought this EP. I've had this many people who paid attention to this, right? You can leverage your whole self within that rather than them picking on you saying, well, you've only done this aspect to it. So this is how much I'm going to, right? So you think about a Joe Budden. He gets his podcast deal. He says they're preying on my listeners, right? But he has so many listeners that he can then position himself and reevaluate that and say, you know what? Nah, I got a following. I don't have to be here, right? I don't have to be with Spotify. There are people praying to have partnerships with Spotify. Right. On the flip side, he's like, yeah, I don't have to be here. Joe Rogan, for example, he has such a following that he can take his podcast wherever he wants. I think somebody correct me if I'm wrong. He signed $100 and something million contract with I think it was Spotify for it, right? You don't get to leverage that if you don't have that type of following. So the overall theme I want you to start focusing on: are you the best? Are you that person, right? And that's when you start to think about, how do I reevaluate this, right? How do I renegotiate whatever I've been in at this point? Because if I'm here, more or less, you kind of need me at this point. I don't need you.
Right. And I got a real true story for that, Corey, to hit that point. I used to work with a guy, and he was a guy, he built the system. He was the one that was there in the beginning. He built it along with one of the higher up bosses. So, the higher up boss had his back. This guy was toxic. He just did not get along with people at all. He was not a people person. He didn't trust other people to do the job. And so for everybody, and I'm not talking about a small team, I'm talking about 30, 40 people interacting with him. He was so toxic they tried to fire him, but the top boss liked him. And was like, nah, we can get rid of everybody else. We can get, as long as I got him, I don't need the rest of y'all. So they put him on night shift. He worked night shift by himself because he did not get along with other people. And then he eventually came back to days. He kind of changed his attitude a little bit. But I remember as that system started to draw down and transition, we all moved to different places. He is still working on that system. It was his baby. There was nothing he could do wrong. He would go into meetings, and he was an employee. He wasn't a owner of a company or anything like that. He was an employee for a company, but he had so much power And then he had the backing of the person who had the most power, that no matter what the other company said about how he's treating our people, what he's saying, they were like, oh, well, I remember he told them that, that I believe Tyrus might sabotage the system. I'm like, what? Like, where do you even get that from? And I was the type of person in those days of my life, I'm like, who are you talking to and what are you talking about? And he would never address you face to face either. He would say what he wanted to say to other people, and then he would walk off. Like when I asked him that question, he walked off. He never addressed it. And so I ended up moving to another place, but I know that he's still in his position where he is now. He controls that system, and anybody that works there falls under that. And so when you're the best, because he was great at his job, when you're the best, you have way more leverage. And when the people see that you bring value to the table, they ain't getting rid of you. They'll replace everybody else, but they won't get rid of you.
And then on the flip side, you might have somebody that I have a story of somebody that, I work with that was the best at what they did. Like they left the role, that organization will be really hurt. But what he did, he expected that they were going to give him a raise. He expected that when it was time for him to go to that next GS level, it's GS scale is something they do in the federal system. He expected that they were going to give him this type of money and this is what it was going to look like. And they weren't. They weren't, because again, their system was created a certain way. And even on the flip side, there are going to be times where your full-time job knows that you are the best at what you do, and they still won't pay you what you want or maybe what you deserve. Or they still be like, sorry, you still got to go to, we only can give you like a $1,000 raise. Like it might be just what it is. And if that happens, that's okay. Even if you create a system, create a process that you just like, man, I created all this stuff for you. So what? You still can utilize that information and leverage it and say, listen, I was to be able to create this financial system that was able to decrease the processing time by 30%. We got 3 awards. Like you can still use that to boost your resume. Still make sure that every time you're transitioning from place to place, like you can still talk that up. Even yes, you might have to leave that system behind because listen, you created it for them. Even if, that award might have been under that entire organization, if you contributed to that, if what you created, what made a tremendous effect in how things ran, utilize that to build your resume and utilize that as you're transitioning into this space of ownership, of business ownership. And a lot of people, again, you get so upset with your role, but a lot of times you're not thinking about, listen, I'm that dude, I'm that girl. I was able to create something that's amazing. So now what can I do as I'm working on my exit strategy to make sure that as I'm transitioning out, it's effective? Because sometimes, again, Spotify is a good partner that Joe Budden needed, because again, this is someone else that is pretty high up in the podcasting, streaming type of system. Just like iHeart, again, they're the top one. So those partnerships are necessary. Partnerships are necessary sometimes. Can you end up in the wrong partnerships? Yes. And then if you're in a wrong partnership, still again, reevaluate, identify, can I renegotiate? This is the changes that I want. And if they don't want to adhere to those negotiations, and it's some things that they essentially say they don't want to basically comply with, or they want to go or move forward with, essentially you can decide, okay, I'm going to just terminate my contract. I've given myself enough time to renegotiate. I have the right numbers, the figures. I can tell you what awards, accolades that we were able to bring. I can tell you how many more listeners we were able to bring. However, it's not working out. So let me start working on my strategy at least a year out. And then when I do transition, it's effective. Because even though, again, there might be times where you have to jump ship, Joe Budden has to now he's creating his podcast network. But the difference between him and Charlamagne already had a plan. He already had the different podcasts he wanted to bring. He already had the partnerships. He already had the relationships. He already had his chess. Again, the chess game was stacked. Again, I don't know how to play chess, so we talk about checkers. So just imagine all your little checker pieces got them little the two little stacks on it, and you like, listen, you only got 2 people on that side. I only got 5 here. So listen, I came here like I'm going to win the game. So he came with everything already stacked. And when it was time to transition, all right, this is what I got. I've already talked to Matt Barnes. I've already talked to Noriega. I already talked to this person, that person. This is going to be able to do this. And these partnerships that I'm creating, they're going to be able to bring a whole bunch of other listeners, also African-American listeners, to your platform. And African Americans are pushing the culture. It's cool. It's hip. Like it shows in the data. So now when he's coming in, he's prepared. Either way, if he pivoted, he would have been fine. And I think that was the biggest difference between Joe Budden and Charlemagne. Charlemagne came with like a very stacked deck. And now, again, after the fact, Joe Budden is now having to recreate that. And I'm sure he'll be fine because he has a great following. But again, there is a power in planning and preparing for if you have to move and just change partnerships altogether. But at least you have all the figures and the facts prepared and ready. So if you do have to make that pivot, you can do that. Or hopefully everything works out for you as you make that leverage. So let's transition a little bit as well. I don't know if you guys have any more points on that, but let's talk about when is it time to focus on ownership and what is beneficial. I know we've been talking about exit strategies as well, but when we're talking about the rise or the fall, if you want to continue to be a company, organization, entrepreneur, or if you want to transition out of your full-time job so you can be fully into ownership, what is beneficial about the exit strategy? And also, when is it time to start focusing on ownership? Should I start 2 years before I leave, 1 year, or as soon as I get inside that door, I'm already thinking about my plan to leave?
Hey, how can I get out of here? So for me, there has to be a plan, and there has to be a strategic plan that you can apply over time. I don't suggest anybody just up and quit their job. And what I heard from Dr. Frazier when I was listening to him, his plan was more of, okay, you work your job and you take some of that paycheck, and then you take that paycheck and put it into investments. And then when those investments return that money, you take the money from the investments and then you start to build your job. So that's a plan. And then once you get, say your business is producing 6 months of your finances, and because when we start a business, it's going to take time to take off. It's not going to just give you your income overnight. But when you can have stability in that business, it's constantly able to pay your bills over a period of time. 6 months, 7 months is usually a good time frame. Then you can leave your job, and you should start thinking about your skill set, the value you bring to the table. Because if you're not valuable in your job, like Corey mentioned earlier, you're not going to be valuable as a business owner. If you don't have the skill set in your day job right now, you're not going to have that skill set when you're a business owner. And it's 10 times harder. Maybe it's 100 times harder, because now you have to negotiate everything. Your clients aren't just going to pay you what you ask for the product or for your service. You got to have to negotiate. You're going to have to build trust. You're going to have to bring data. You're going to have to show proof. Most business owners can go back and say, you know what, I worked in this job for 15 years. This is what I've developed over that time. This is why you can trust me. So in order to look at ownership, and I think you also have to be prepared to stand out there on your own. When you work for a company, you can fall back on the company. You can say, hey, look, I'm having a hard time. Let me just work my job. You're going to continuously get that paycheck. You have a hard time in business and you disappear, you lose clients, and then you lose bread on the table. So being strong enough to stand out there, showing your value, your worth, and then strategically plan it has to be a step-by-step process. You can wing it in business, but you'll be one of those 87% that don't make it to the 10-year mark. 87% don't make it. There's reasons why. And number one is probably not having a strategic plan, a system, an exit strategy, an end goal, all those things that are necessary to run a successful business and also keep the processes flowing. And another little point before I pass it over to Corey, when we want to build a business, we don't want to give ourselves another job. Most people leave their full-time job to go work double the hours in business, and they're still doing all the work. That's not a business. That's a job that you have disguised as a business. And I don't care if you say, well, I'm making all the money, I set my rates, I do it all. Well, you're killing yourself doing it. So I'm not a fan of the work hard. I'm a fan of the work smart.
No, and that's really what it is. I mean, you have to put yourself in a position, and especially for those of you who are trying to transition out of your job. So you got to put yourself in a position to say, am I going to be working 100 hours a week, killing myself to make less money than I had before? Right. We don't live in an age where you got to go homeless, to be able to start a business. So when do I think it's time to leave, like having an exit strategy and whatnot? I really want you to figure out how much it costs to be you. I want you to think about how much money that will take. and then add probably 15 to 20% to it. The reason I say that is you got a whole bunch of benefits with your job right now that you just thinking, man, I'm just going to leave my job today. I ain't got to worry about them no more. Well, congratulations. You don't have dental insurance. You don't have health insurance. Those eyeglasses that you want, that you was paying $4 a month for that insurance, you got to pay for that for yourself. And it's going to cost a little bit more because you don't have a group plan anymore. So I want you to start to think about those things. So how much does it cost to be you, right? How much money are you making per year for you to be able to live on that? And maybe I'll challenge people. How can you keep the same lifestyle that you have currently, right? And you don't have to change anything to be able to leave the job that you have and generate money in your business, right? And then from there, again, add the extra money because you're going to have some extra fees, right? You got your insurance, right? You got transportation fees, right? You got different things that you might have to work in there that your job might have provided for you, right? If my laptop for my job goes out on me right now, I got a job that's going to give me another laptop. Do you have that type of money to be able to do these types of things? So when you think about leaving your company, what's your exit strategy? I also want you to put a date on it, right? I want you to say, by this date on this year, I will be done with my job. Because if you continue to tell yourself, whenever it blows up, whenever I get there, whenever it starts to pop off, that type of stuff, you'll just kind of flow. And if it happens, it happens. Maybe the date passed and you're like, I'll give myself another 4 years. It's fine. But I want you to put a date on it. That way, I need to be making this amount of money by this date. I need to be making that. And then I can transition out. And then also, I want you to think about as you're exiting your job, get to a point and work yourself up so high that you're actually losing money because you're at work. And when you can get to that point, that's when you know you should leave.
Those were some great points. Even for me, again, I've served 17 years in the Air Force, and I could easily be like, all right, I'm gonna just leave, maybe just do straight reserve and just go into my business. No, because I know there's so many benefits that comes with retiring at 20. I know there's so many benefits that come with, transition out, things like health benefits. I know that if I transition out at a certain point and completely get out altogether, now I have to consider health benefits and finding other means to do that. So let me go about it strategically. If I have to do another 5 years and I have to be strategic about it, I can do that. I have a plan. I have an exit strategy. And say I decide I want to leave before then, I can still do that. But in the meantime, I'm going to make sure that I stack my deck effectively and think about what Corey talked about, making sure that I'm thinking about what it costs to live to be me. I'm also a single parent, so it's not even thinking about solely me. Think about if you're a parent out there. If you have a wife, if you have kids, you also have to consider, what does it cost for them to live? I have to make sure that I'm also adding and supporting in this realm as well. I'm also making sure before I make this decision, have I talked to my spouse? Have we really discussed this? Have I considered how this is going to affect the lifestyle of my children and where they're going to school? And maybe they're going to private school. I'm paying for it now. Now, can I also take that up as well? So you have to think about all those. If you decide to move, I'm relocating to the DC area. When I was looking for a new position and somewhere else to go, I was strategic about it. I could have applied for positions in a bunch of other places in Colorado. I could have moved to Louisiana. I could have moved to a multitude of places. However, I knew that, and of course, it's a gamble because who knows if I would have got it, God willing. Thank God I got the position in DC. But when I applied for it, I know that in DC, my family's there. So now I have additional support. I know in DC, when it comes to travel, when it comes to a lot of mentorships and great partnerships and friends I've been able to make in that area, I know that I have so many connections there that when I move there, this is great because I'm going to have more access. I can have more support for my children if I do need to travel more. I know that I have access to some great partnerships and some awesome friends. I know that when it comes to travel, I have 3-4 airports I have access to. Like I was thinking about all these things when I even looked for my next job. I also knew the next job that I was going to go in was going to put me in a more executive tier in leadership. So now I'm going to utilize that experience because, again, it's showing me the strategic lens. I'm able to be in different rooms. And now when I speak about leadership development, I'm speaking from a whole nother level because I've been able to really leverage how I've navigated my career. So I thought about all these things before I hit, I'm going to apply for this job in Virginia, or I'm going to apply for this job in DC, or this job in I also applied in Georgia because, again, they were all strategic moves. So these are all the things you want to think about. How does it affect my family? How does it cost for my family? Like, what is going to be the benefit? And when I am even thinking about moving, relocating, is my target audience there? Am I able to reach more people in that location? Or if I'm going to utilize this virtual space, okay, what is that going to look like? What is the cost for a laptop, for the cameras, for the lights? I got a whole setup going on, the board. Like, what is the cost of all that? Even all this that I had to do in the background here. Yes, I had to invest in that. I had to get plaques. I spent, man, this whole plaque for my degree, I had to spend like $100 on that. But again, all these things that I knew was going to be beneficial in the look and the feel of what I'm giving you guys today. So again, you have to think about so many things. And when we talk about systems, there should be a system that you create to navigate partnerships, to navigate the moves that you're going to make, to navigate your exit strategy. What is the systems you have created? And if you haven't created, that's why you need to get on this live on Thursday, ask your questions, and really get around people or start even thinking of how you're going to pivot these different things. So before we close it, as we talk about Joe Budden and Charlamagne, and the theme of this is the rise or the fall, because as business leaders out there, leaders at different level, we want to think about the decisions you're making. Is it going to be beneficial to help you continue to rise in your career, your profession, or your goal towards ownership? Or are you going to continue to fall because you are not really playing the game of chess effectively? So when we think about Charlamagne or Joe Budden, do you think they'll rise, or do you think there'll be a fall in how they are strategically or not strategically pivoting how they're going to do their level of ownership? We'll start with
Yeah, go ahead, Tyrus.
So Charlemagne definitely rise. He has strategically partnered with iHeartRadio to bring his own platform, and he has enough in the deck, enough stacked up to bring with him. So he's going to continue to go up. I can even see him becoming a TV personality, someone that has their own show, maybe on their own network, or maybe, I don't compare him fully to Tyler Perry, but I see him following a similar path. Tyler Perry started on OWN. Now he has a little piece in BET and other places because OWN was not big enough to hold everything that he had. So I feel the same way about Charlemagne. What he is building is huge, and the space he's occupying is not going to be big enough for him. So his gift would make room for him. So there's going to be some room, some opportunities, some doors that open up for him. So he's definitely going to rise. I feel like Joe Budden is going to rise. I don't feel like he's going to have the same rise as Charlemagne, but he will continue to rise. He bought a lesson, and he bought a good lesson from Spotify. They taught him something, and I'm sure that he is going to take that information. He's going to apply it in the future, so he's going to make wiser decisions. And not to say that all his decisions were wrong. Sometimes you operate with what you know. But when you pay for a lesson, when you get around mentorship, when you see different entities and you learn how the business works, then you can make better decisions. Whether or not you become huge depends on what you're bringing to the table. Right now, he's bringing a little bit of culture to the table. He's bringing some good shows for his followers. I don't listen to him, so I don't feel like everything he's talking about is reaching a huge demographic or a huge population. So he has to continue to add and to build and to bring things to the table. So they both get a rise from me. I think Charlemagne, even though I only 40% like him, I think he's going to be great. I think he's going to continue to build, continue to grow, continue to sharpen his sword and bring people along with him.
Yeah, and I think you just touched on what I wanted to say too. You said you 40% like him, which means there's an aspect to him that you like. I think Joe Budden just is who he is, and there's some growth that needs to happen because I've only listened to one of his podcast shows, very raunchy, very like out there, whatnot. And I kind of equated to early Charlemagne, like, right. So Charlemagne, the one thing I love about him is he just is who he is, but he also shows growth, right? So people used to joke about his skin, but he did the dermatology thing. Like people used to joke about his weight loss, like the blemishes on himself, the way that he used to talk to people. There's real growth in him. And what that means is there's an aspect of Charlemagne that you can fall in love with, whether it's mental health, whether it's how funny he is, whether it's how blunt he can be, whether it's him finding out news or whatnot. Because he has an aspect of music, obviously, and he if you've ever listened to the Breakfast Club, he can break down the lyrics and ask questions based on that, right?
Mhm.
So there's aspects to Charlamagne that you can fall in love with. And Tyrus, you prove my point basically. You like 40% of him, right? I like Charlamagne for who he is, and I'm always for people who are unapologetically the best version of themselves or striving to be the best version. So I say rise for Charlamagne, monumental rise for Charlamagne. I think that Joe Budden will rise, but there are issues that he has to fix, right? I think if he learns his lesson from Spotify, he'll be fine. But if you continue to, and this is something that Charlamagne said, you continue to hop from platform to platform, to company, and you keep getting these whack contract deals. And then when somebody checks you about it, you say, well, I own my own thing. Well, right, that's all fine and dandy. All three of us own our own thing on here, but I'm not Oprah, I'm not Tyler Perry, I'm not Bill Gates. So I think there'll be a rise for Joe Budden. I think Charlamagne is going to take off once he can finally just go and be him.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, you have two powerful men, powerful Black men. I love what both of them are doing. And we will have those moments where we might butt heads with other people. And I think it's so important because they have like, people say they have like this love-hate relationship, but they do have a relationship. And I think that sometimes as well in these seasons of rising and falling, we might have those peers and those mentors that we have to really just embrace and have an understanding of, okay, maybe we don't have all the answers. And in both of their stories, you saw two men that came from spaces where they were able really to be able to transform their lives and their careers. And yes, there's going to be still some work that Joe Budden might have to do personally as he's developing and growing, because the reality is we do need to look at what is the non-changing factor in all these different experiences that I've had. And if Joe Budden is finding that he is the constant fixture in all of these different experiences that he had, it's the question now will be, what breakdowns do maybe I have? Maybe there's breakdowns within my team. Maybe I need to look at growing here and also reevaluating my team as I pivot and really start even looking at, okay, Joe Budden comes off like a real high D, straight to the point, like I'm gonna come at you, but also recognizing that what Charlamagne has been able to do, even when you listen to the Breakfast Club, is that he's been able to leverage relationships. That's another leverage thing that we talk about. And I know we're about to wrap it up, but there's another leverage aspect to relationships that you're making. So although, yes, I'm just a radio personality here to interview you, to promote your new product or your new business venture or your music. However, now I'm building relationships with these artists who are also looking into, getting into TV and doing different things. And now I can leverage these relationships. So now when I am going into this new season, I'm like, hey, I remember that he's done that live. Hey, you know what? You'll be great for podcasts. You'll be great for TV. And now he's leveraging another piece of his business. So again, leverage is the word of the day. What are you doing? How strategic are you about leveraging your full time? How strategic are you about looking at where you're headed, and strategic about even leveraging your partnerships so you can get to that pathway of ownership? So for them both, I do think that they both have the potential to rise. They're definitely going to rise. Charlamagne, his rise is going to be it's going to be a little higher. And not saying Joe Budden is not, but there's still some things that that's keeping his plane down a little bit, that he has to pivot and work through so he can get that weight off and now he can soar high. So both of those gentlemen are powerhouses. They're great. And I think that they're going to be able to do great things. So shout out to both of them because I respect both of them. And, I'm really enjoying to see how they're pivoting and growing as men and pivoting and growing towards ownership, which a lot of people need to see so they can be motivated and inspired to be or walk in that same line, but just doing it in a way that's more effective.
Perfect. So as we wrap up, guys, I just want to thank you all for joining us, for watching with us, for listening to this conversation that we're having. Hopefully we're able to take out some principles and some things that you can actually apply in your businesses. One is leverage. Even if you are still an employee, still leverage your job, leverage that system. So just keep that word leverage in mind, keep strategic planning in mind, end game in mind. All of those things will help you to get to that next level. We are your ACT Leadership and Management Consulting team. This is our Act and Lead live series, Rise or Fall, every Saturday, 1 p.m. Eastern. Also, remember to join us Thursdays at 7 p.m. Eastern for live business and leadership question and answer. So what that is basically you bring yourself to the table. You tell us what issues that you're having, what concerns you have with your business. Are you an emerging leader? Are you a established leader? Are you a senior leader? Are you a senior business owner? Are you just are you still an employee, or anything that we can help answer to push you to that next level in the current position that you're in, to leverage what you have to get what you want. That's what we're here for. So check out our Facebook page, like it, share it with other people that you think might find it interesting. And as we go out, Corey, close us out.
Hey, so he told y'all, look, this is Acting Lead, where we mix action and leadership. And look, after all that, I'm just say this, right? In the great words of Master P, you got to be body.
Body, ride it.
I was about to say, in the great words of Joe Budden, pump, 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 pump it up.
We're going to let you keep that one. This Master P thing. Guys, have a great weekend. We'll see you next week.
Bye, guys.